Yes, during these 4 days. We'll see if that holds true this week. But of course, you're to pick the winners. Go out with a bang. Hopefully, joined as usual on Sunday mornings by Mr. Bryce Morrow, third and schlong. How you doing this morning, Bryce?
I'm doing well. Over here at my mom's house in Washington, D.C., so it's a little bit different of a setup for me. She just moved houses, so I'm here helping her move and whatnot. And then I'm going to Scotland next week for the Open with our one and only JVC. So that'll be an interesting time. It's nice that it comes over the MLB All-Star break. It just kind of makes for a really DFS out trip because you can just red golf before and then not have to worry about really anything when you're there.
That'll be a good time. Yeah, I'm headed to Chicago on Thursday. Me, JT, Steve, Boyd, catching some games.
Yeah, Boyd was trying to get me to come up for that, and
yeah,
I was just like, well, I'm not going to be here, and he's forgotten 3 times because he keeps texting me. He's like, dude, are you gonna come or not? And I'm like, I can't.
Let me tell you, that trip has a lot of text for the complexity, the relative simplicity, I would say, of the trip. But we got it going on, and I usually spend these MLB All-Star breaks kind of disconnected. Turn off the phone, get up to the mountains, hang out with the pup, that sort of thing. So we'll do that starting tomorrow. But today, if we're doing the show, we're doing content, we got to pick some winners. We gotta go out on top. We were talking before the show, Bryce. It does seem like a hard slate to get different, at least for me. People that have watched the show, I've been on pretty much every show this whole season. I do like to get different at pitcher. I like to spend down a pitcher when I can find a reasonable option. And man, at least so far, I'm not really seeing much for cheap pitchers that I'm comfortable clicking on. So you got to, play the slate that you're given. And this looks like one where, I don't know, I'm going to be holding hands with a lot of people in terms of the pitchers. Certainly the bats seem kind of obvious too. So we'll have to find at least a few places to get different, hopefully, along the show. We got 10 games to talk about. So I'm sure we'll find at least a couple places we can get away from the field. The slate does start at 1:35 Eastern time. It does start with Kansas City and Boston as the first listed game on the DraftKings slate. We've got Brian Bayo and Brady Singer pitching in Boston. It's going to be hot pretty much everywhere that we talk about. We have these Sunday morning slates. They don't really include the West Coast games. So it's mostly East Coast ballparks here in Fenway, 90 degrees, relatively low humidity and wind. So just the heat to deal with. Brian Bayo pitching for the Red Sox. Brady Singer pitching for Kansas City. Two pitchers who I really don't have much interest in, 8,500 for Singer, 8K for Bayo. I think this game is going to be one where the bats thrive. I've been on the Brady Singer is overrated train for a lot of this year. He's actually pitched pretty well. He has done much better at home. And he has had, in my opinion, kind of a lot of good matchups throughout the year. Does not get one here. And I like lefties against Singer anyway. So this Red Sox team, they've got 7 lefties in the lineup versus Singer in Fenway Park. I've got to like them quite a bit. And I certainly think you can go to the Royals side of this game as well if you want to. Over to you, Bryce, for Royals and Red Sox.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the bat side of this game. I think it'll go fairly under the radar just because we're going to get some super chalky offenses that we'll get to here. But I don't mind the Royals. They're a little bit cheaper than the Red Sox, in general. But I like both sides for hitters. I prefer lefties from both sides here. I think my favorite hitter in the game would be Devers. Bobby Witt's always a good play, and I think he's an even better play today just because, if you're paying up for shortstop, most people are going to play Trey Turner. So, I think you can get Bobby Witt at significantly, lower ownership relative to, what I think the perceived difference between the two is. So,
yeah,
I think that's a pretty, solid tournament play. If I was stacking this game, it'd probably be 5-3 with Witt, Devers, and then, with some really crappy, cheap pitchers. But, as you mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to find those cheaper pitchers today. So, it'll make some of these offenses that are more expensive, like everyone paying up for offense, I think will go to Philly. So, like if you find like expensive players elsewhere that you like, uh, I think they'll go a little bit under-owned. The chalkiest hitter in this game is by far Yoshida. I think hitting third, only 3.7K. I think he'll be a pretty popular one-off and whatnot. So just keep that in mind when you're building your teams. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't leave him out of stacks or anything like that. But I would probably try and find a different one-off just because I think he's going to be like super popular uh, with that strategy.
Yeah. Singer has some. This goes back to pretty much every season he's pitched some pretty severe splits where he gets hit real hard by lefties, does pretty well against right-handed hitters, which obviously sets up well for Boston. I'm going to be in on the Boston stack. I will say this last Sunday before the All-Star break is an interesting one, especially for bullpens. They've got 4 days off, so teams can kind of empty the tank. If they've got a fresh bullpen, they can, if they want to, use their 4 or 5 best bullpen relievers to start the game, no matter what the score is, with the break coming up. Nice thing about the Royals, they don't really have anyone that scary in the bullpen that you need to avoid. So they do have a rested pen, but it's not one that takes me off of the Red Sox. That'll not be the case with all these teams. There's going to be a couple games where it's like, yeah, they have, their 4 best arms in the bullpen haven't pitched in 2 games. They got 4 days off coming up. Those guys are probably coming in the game no matter what. That's not, it's not something I'm worried about with this Boston stack. So I'm in on the Boston lefties in particular. I don't mind Kansas City, and I'm with you. I think we're going to see runs in Boston and Kansas City, but that's going to be a general sentiment throughout this show outside of a couple games. We think we're going to get high-scoring games here on Sunday for the most part, including in this next one, Philadelphia and Oakland. We've got a weird situation for Philadelphia. They're going to open with one of their ace relievers. Philadelphia is kind of doing the same strategy that I mentioned. Orion Kirkering, he did actually pitch yesterday, but they're going to open with him. He's going to throw, I think, just 1 inning, and then it'll be Mercado for the bulk innings for Philadelphia. He has not been very good. I don't think is very good. So, the daytime ace, they've come through a couple times with slate busting performances. They did it against Povich. I can't remember if that was a daytime game. I think it was. And then they did it. You remember the Chris Sale game where they went absolutely crazy. Yeah. Like they've had not a great offensive season, but they have absolutely shattered the slate a couple times against chalk pitchers at low ownership. I don't think Mercado is going to be chalk, or he certainly shouldn't be. But yeah, I don't think that the A's are the craziest play here. 90 degrees, humid in Philadelphia. Ball's going to be flying. But the real story of this game, of course, is the Philadelphia bats against Joey Estes. I was on the show last time he pitched against Boston. Was talking about the lefties there. Estes has had a decent amount of success pitching at home and a decent amount of success pitching against right-handed hitters. But when you put him on the road against lefties, he has been just absolutely crushed. Talked about that a lot with Boston, who the lefties in that game, they all went off. I think we could see a similar thing here with Philadelphia. Schwarber, Harper, Stott, Marsh, even Stubbs down there in the 9 hole swinging from the left side. Those are the guys that I'm primarily targeting. Of course, you can play Trey Turner and Bohm and Castellanos. Those guys aren't bad plays, but it is the lefties that I really want against Estes. I don't think I'm going to get too much Oakland here outside of, Lawrence Butler at 2,500 leading off. If you need the savings, he's going to be popular, but it's hard to really say that's a bad play given how well he's performing and, the price tag and lineup position and all that. So I guess long story short, another game where I certainly like the bats better than the pitching, and Philadelphia is going to be very popular, but it's also hard to really say anything bad about this lineup. They should do some damage here against Oakland. What are you doing, Bryce, with the Phillies and the A's?
Yeah, once again, another game that I want bats in, and I think this game will be the most popular game on the slate, especially on the Phillies side. I think it's really easy to just kind of click on some cheap A's bats to pair with the Phillies. Like if you're hand building lineups, it just kind of fits like pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I think the game stack might go a little over owned just because of that. You have a good reliever starting the game, and then it's going to be a bullpen game for Philly. I don't love the A's in this spot as much as the field does. Like even relative to the price, they have a decent total compared to some of these other teams, but I'd rather take a shot on like some of these other offenses we'll get to in a bit. Just to get a little different because I'd much rather eat chalk with Philly here. I think these bats are kind of hard to get away from. You touched on the lefties. Like even if you're looking at props, these guys are almost even money to hit a home run on some sites. Like Harper and Schwarber's, like you don't really see 2.5 props that often outside of 2.5 base props outside of course that often. You get them here, and it's just very slight juice to the under. So I don't think it's going to be like kind of using the props to determine like, oh, everyone kind of notices this. This isn't like some like mega mind game theory play. The Phillies are going to be popular and for good reason. If you're building with them, like I would just try and get different elsewhere, whether it's a pitcher, or maybe don't play Lodolo. I think he's going to be by far the most popular arm on the slate. Or if you do play Lodolo, I'd go like super off the board at SP2, just because, we can get into some pitcher talk here when we get to the pitcher games, but there's not really a clear cut SP2 here, but there's some good options that'll all be like fairly chalky. So, if you can get off one of them, play a different second stack. Schwarber's the top bat on the slate, in my opinion. Him and Harper, like if I was building like a cash team, would be the first two batters in my cash game team. If you want to play Philly, and I'm not telling you not to because they're really good plays here, just try and find a way to get different on your teams.
Yeah, I mean, every slate, every sport, there's going to be someone has to be the most popular play or the most popular stack, right? And sometimes that's out of necessity, right? Because there's no other good options and someone has to be most popular. That's not the case here, right? Philadelphia, is, at least in my opinion, rightfully highly owned. It is a truly incredible spot for them. So these are the spots where I don't mind eating that chalk. And, maybe even it's just your one-offs, right? Maybe you play I'm playing my normal 5 lineups. I'll probably have one lineup with all 5 Phillies lefties, maybe some chalk pitching, and then, I'll try to get as different as I can on the other 3 bats. And the nice thing about baseball is there's enough lineup spots and enough options that you rarely ever dupe yourself. I mean, even in the flagship, it's almost always a solo winner, no matter what. So I guess my point is I'm kind of inclined to play these Schwarbers, Harpers, Stotts of the world anyway, and just try to get different elsewhere. But that's Philadelphia and Oakland, Miami, and Cincinnati up next. Going to be another popular game here. You mentioned Nick Lodolo coming off actually 2 bad starts in a row. He was on the IL prior to that Colorado start. There was weather in that game that delayed it for, 45 minutes to an hour. I played him. We talked about this in, I think, Boyden on the show on Friday. Was all excited when he got back out there after the delay. That wasn't a certainty, and then got absolutely blown up in the inning that he came back to. I don't know. I'm kind of giving him a pass for that one, but it does seem like the field is as well. It doesn't look like there's going to be any ownership discount on Lodolo here. I think he will be the highest owned pitcher on the slate. You said so as well, Bryce. Looks like he could be, 40%, something like that, 40, 50% in single entry. Yeah. Makes sense to me. I mean, it is the Miami Marlins, who obviously have a bad lineup. They also seem like a team that's probably ready for a break. It's been a rough season for the Marlins. So, yeah, if you want to buy into that narrative, I think there's something there maybe. Lodolo, I wouldn't be surprised if he went out and absolutely shoved on Miami today. Fellow lefty Trevor Rogers pitching for the Marlins. He's been a little bit better recently. He was one 2 or 3 seasons ago. I had a lot of faith in Trevor Rogers. He pitched like an ace for a while, but he's really fallen off. Gets hit hard by right-handed bats. And, of course, we know what the Reds can do, have broken the slate a couple times recently. Helped me have a big score on Friday night, I believe that was. This Reds right-handed power. I mean, India back in the lineup. He did get removed early yesterday with a knee bruise, but looks like he's fine. Candelario, Steer, Stevenson, Slater, Sheep, Reese Hines. I mean, dude is just crushing it every single game, it seems like. So I like the Reds here. It does look like Rogers is going to get some ownership. I get it as a 5K pitcher on a slate where, I mean, I'm leaning not towards playing him, Bryce, but he is the best cheap option, I think, which I think is why he's going to get some ownership here. What are you doing with Lodolo, Rogers, and then offense in this game too? Because another hot day, 90 degrees, humid in Cincy. The ball will be flying again. We should see, I think, some home runs in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Rogers here is that, he's going to have a longer leash than like a lot of these other cheap guys that like might not pitch a ton.
He at least has a chance, right? Like,
he could easily get his way through 6 innings, give up like 2 or 3 earned, and pile up like 5 strikeouts. And in that case, you're golden. So like I do see that path. I also see the path to him getting hammered. So this is kind of the situation where I do want to be over on both sides. Like I want to be over on Cincy hitters for leverage, and I want to be over on Rogers just because like he makes stacks fit and pitchers fit that you can't fit unless you play him or someone equally cheap as him. And I'd much rather take like, I don't know, say I was thinking about like 3 or 4 cheap pitchers. Like I'm not playing any of these other guys. I think the next cheapest playable pitcher, in my opinion, would be Mikolas. And I don't really want to play him either. So like, that's like, I'm not playing like Maeda, Estes, like Schuster, like any of these other guys down here. So like, he's kind of it. So I end up with more of him in my builds than I want, like when I run my 150. So I'll probably end up like hard capping him, but he is my favorite cheap option of the day. If you do want to go down there, I think he'll come in, and for that reason, like I think he'll come in around 15%, which to me seems pretty fair. I'm planning on playing him around 20%. Is kind of where like my mind has targeted for him. He just lets you do things that you can't. So that being said, I have no qualm stacking against him. I think it's a pretty solid play actually, just because he's going to carry like a decent amount of ownership for like a pretty crappy, chalky, cheap pitcher. So like, Reds 3-mans, Reds 5-mans would be my preferred way to attack this game. Don't have tons of interest in Miami hitters. I'd rather be over on Lodolo. I just kind of prefer him to these other like expensive pitchers on the slate. He's not like an all-in type of arm or anything, but 40% sounds right to me. Like I'm not going to go like 60 or above or anything. Like I don't like absolutely love him, but I think he's the best pitching player on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a slam dunk. I would say that about Lodolo, right? I wouldn't be shocked at all if this didn't go well for him. I'm with you. I do think he is, we bring it back to cash games. If I was playing cash games, Nick Lodolo would certainly be in my lineup, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he struggled here. It is amazing hitting weather in a great hitting ballpark, and it's not like Lodolo has been lights out. He's had 2 bad starts in a row. So, if you're not playing him, any Miami bats you'd use as leverage. I mean, I don't mind De La Cruz, Berger, Xavier Edwards is 2.5K. I'm with you. I do lean the Lodolo side, but any Miami bats look good to you as leverage, Chris?
Yeah, the righties who like won't get pinched for, pretty much the guys you suggested. I could even see like Jazz here, lefty. He'll carry like 0 ownership. He's only 4.2K, and he obviously has a ton of upside. And if you're betting against Lodolo here, you're betting him to get hit. So it likely won't be. He would probably have like 2 at bats against him, maybe 3. You're kind of betting against the bullpen too. So
yeah, I do think
Go
ahead.
I think it's gonna be a high scoring slate at hitter. But like these are some of the cheap bats that I wanted to get to that I'd like prefer to Oakland personally. Just because it gives you leverage. Like no one's gonna play the Philly pitcher, so you're not getting like the added bonus of having leverage against like the chalk pitcher. And I like them just as much.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I'll probably grab some of those Marlins bats on teams that I don't have. Although you don't have to go crazy with them, right? You're really home run hunting. So
yeah, I mean, 2 3-man stacks are all you need. You don't need the full 5-man. I'm not saying it's bad play, but small stacks work as well.
Yeah, if I had to narrow it down, the 2 through 5 Marlins, De La Cruz, Bell, Berger, Edwards would be I think my preferred stack there. I'll probably have one of those in my own lineups on this slate. Detroit and the Dodgers are up next. Another game that kind of has a weird pitching situation. Looks like it's going to be Ryan Yarbrough getting the start for the Dodgers. He last pitched on the 11th, so just a few days ago, threw 34 pitches there. He's been throwing around 30 to 50-ish pitches most outings. So, yeah, I would expect 2 innings, maybe 3 from Yarbrough, and then should be the bullpen behind him. Looking up quickly on the Dodgers bullpen here. I assume they've kind of worn out. Yeah. Not sure exactly what the Dodgers plan this year because they've used a bunch of their relievers in the last 2 days. I assume they won't use most of those guys today. So I guess Detroit, maybe if you want to get really weird, would be interesting here. I don't think Yarbrough is very good himself. Detroit pitching going to apparently open with Bo Brieske. I would expect, 1 or 2 innings out of him, and then it's going to be Kenta Maeda after Brieske. Maeda just has, I think it's fair to say, pretty much nothing left. Has had 2 bad outings in a row. He's been awful all season. He's pitched a bunch of innings, 65 innings for Maeda, and he's got an ERA over 7 still. No Dodgers lineup yet that I've seen, but you got to have interest in the Dodgers, assuming it's a normal lineup against Kenta Maeda. Wind blowing in Detroit, it is a pitcher's park for sure, so I guess home runs could be hard to come by. That would be, I think, the case against the Dodgers. Over to you, Bryce. What are you doing with Tigers and Dodgers here?
I want absolutely nothing to do with the pitching in this game. As you mentioned, it's not very good. That's why the total's sitting a little bit higher with, not the best hitting weather. So I actually like Detroit. Don't think anyone's going to play them here. They're kind of like the Marlins to me, just without that like added leverage. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're also better plays in my opinion. Just because I don't really have much respect for Yarbrough. I don't really want to play him on this slate. I think there are better spots to go to, even, if we're looking for pitching. Assuming a full Dodgers lineup, and, even if we don't get it, I'm still good with the Dodgers here. Maeda is just a guy that I've wanted to pick on all year. You're going to get them at, like, really low ownership, I think. Like, the pivot off of Philly would probably be, like, Boston for like an expensive team, and then like the Dodgers would come in like well behind that. I think Ohtani's the only guy who will carry significant ownership here just because he does pretty much any slate that he plays against a right-handed pitcher. So I wouldn't leave Ohtani out, obviously, just kind of highlighting that. But yeah, I think the Dodgers like 3-mans are really strong here. You can get some cheaper bats at the bottom of the order to kind of pair with them. So kind of want to be over on hitting here, even though it's not the best weather. At least it's not a dome or, anything that we'll get to in some of these games following. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah. We will get this lineup prior to lock, I assume, since this game starts 5 minutes after after the first game. So we should be good on the Dodgers lineup. We won't get the K-Falic special of playing the unlisted lineup for the low ownership in this game. I will say this park is brutal if you're trying to hit home runs out to center field. It's like 412 with winds blowing in. You see so many well-struck fly balls die on the warning track, especially to the deeper part of the ballpark in center, left center, right center. In Detroit, probably enough to mostly keep me off of Ohtani and Freeman here. Both of those guys do hit a lot of their home runs straight away center. And even for those guys, with the wind blowing in Detroit, they really, really got to get it to hit a home run. So, of course, they could. But on a slate where there are so many good hitting spots, I think I'm going to go away from this game, despite I think we're going to see runs here. I'm just a little concerned it's not going to be via the long ball. And I think you're on the same page with me here, Bryce. I think you're going to need a lot of home runs in your DFS lineup to get to the top today. I don't think the single, two hits that aren't home runs, even if you get a couple RBIs, a couple runs, I just don't think it's going to be quite enough, especially for these expensive bats. So I'll probably go away from it. Of course, they could still get the job done. I love playing Ohtani, but I think on this particular slate, I'm going to go in a different direction personally. Let's get to Cleveland and Tampa. I think the lowest total on the slate in this game. We've got Ryan Pepiot pitching for Tampa. He's been pretty solid this year, coming off one of his better performances of the year. Last time out against New York Yankees, pitching at home, 5 2/3 innings, 7 strikeouts, just 1 earned run. Did get the win, 24.6 DraftKings points in that one. He gets to pitch at home here, so he's got that going for him, but a very contact-oriented Guardians lineup, a team, frankly, that I don't really play many pitchers against. But we are going to see ownership on Pepiot. I get it. There's just not very many good options on the slate. He's cheap. He gets to pitch in a dome. He's stretched out, right? He's a pretty good pitcher, in my opinion. So he's got pretty much everything going for him outside of the matchup against this contact-heavy Guardians team. It does look like the field sees that as well. Sabres got Pepiot at 32% ownership currently. That's really high for me against a team that doesn't swing and miss really at all in the Cleveland Guardians. So I don't know if I will get there. Ben Lively, I can kind of continue to bet against this guy. And he continues to get the job done for the most part. He has fallen off a little bit, but has pitched well this year. Soft tossing journeyman righty who is putting it together for Cleveland. Again, I'm not really a buyer on him on this slate. I think you can make the case for him. I probably won't do it myself. And then I just don't really see going to bats in this game when there are so many good spots in the slate. What are you doing, Bryce, with Tampa and Cleveland here?
Going to be significantly under bats. I mean, if you have a read where, someone's going to hit a ton of home runs here, go play it because they're going to be like 1%. Don't really imagine anyone playing bats here. And I just don't see any leverage. Not a great home run park. You're going to need home runs. 2 pretty good real life pitchers, average DFS pitchers above average. In general, I'd much rather attack Tampa Bay than Cleveland just because they strike out more. But, Pepiot gets to pitch at home. He's a little bit cheaper. I'll likely have each guy around 15 to 20%. Nothing like really stands out. Pepiot can get there on like 4 or 5 Ks today at this price.
Yeah.
I don't, especially if Rogers fails. So, I'm a little less worried about a contact-oriented Guardians team. They only strike out at 16% of the clip, but it's not like there's tons of high strikeout pitchers that were like really wanting to jam into our team. So I've come around a bit on Pepiot. I think 30% is too high on him. So I'll likely be under that, but probably around 15 to 20% on each of these pitches for me. And not going to have many bats in this game. Don't have like a crazy one-off play for you guys or anything. It's just kind of a fade for me.
Yeah, I know I said fade in the Bats as well, but looking at it a little bit more, I don't think the Guardians are the craziest play. You said no leverage. That's the part I'll disagree with. I mean, we know people are going to play Pepio here.
Well, I meant like I wasn't
Good
going to have
leverage.
it. I
Yeah,
wasn't going to have much, but
yeah.
it's crazy leverage if you do want to play it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Guardians are going to make contact. They also seem like a team that, I mean, they've played above expectation all year. If you're going to give me a team that's going to come out fighting on the last game before the break, Guardians would be high on my list, frankly. So, I mean, what are we going to get 1% on these guys, Quan and Ramirez, and they
Yeah.
I got a little bit of interest. Might have a Guardian stack in there against Pepio, who has been worse against lefties. Rays bullpen, not a ton of lefties available in the pen, so Cleveland growing on me a little bit. We'll see if I get there. I think I'm gonna avoid Pepio. I get the play, but I just don't like taking pitchers against this Guardians team, even on this particular slate. But certainly, market thinks Pepio pitches well. I mean, Cleveland, I think, has the lowest team or one of the lowest team totals on the entire slate, which is pretty rare for them. They obviously have normally a high expectation. That's Cleveland. And Tampa brings us to Colorado and the New York Mets. Similar weather here on the East Coast to the other East Coast games, 90 degrees, humid, winds blowing out. We've got Jose Quintana, who's going to be, I think, very popular on the slate. Easy to see why against a Rockies team that is one that we just kind of continuously pick on, and it works often. Quintana's been pitching really quite well over his last 5 starts. I don't think there's like anything new with him, but he has been awesome in the month of, second half of June and then into July. Throws up pretty much 100 pitches every time out, or at least he has been. It's a strikeout happy Rockies team. 7,900, I think. At least for me, pretty easy to make the case for Quintana as the best value option. He's not even that cheap, but still the best value option, a pitcher on this slate. And then German Marquez, old friend. I used to love this guy a couple, 2-3 years ago. He's been out injured for a long time now, making his first start of the 2024 season. 7K. I'll look up what he's been doing in the minor leagues. I didn't get a chance to do that this morning, but I can't, unless he's been crushing it, I can't really imagine playing him. I do think the Mets have at least got to be in play against Marquez and a bad Rockies bullpen. Another team in the Rockies that I'm guessing is ready to take a little break from baseball here. What are you doing, Bryce, with the Mets and the Rockies?
Yeah, I think the Mets are really strong here across the board, both pitching and hitting. It's really good pitching weather. Quintana's, it's really good hitting weather. But Quintana's been really good, and the Rockies are absolute dog water. I can't really get to many Rockies stacks here. I think Quintana will be lower owned than he should. Prefer him, up there with Lodolo as like my favorite arms on the slate overall. So, yeah, I'd rather buy it lower ownership relative to, kind of what I'm kind of expecting him to come in around 25%. I want to be like 35 to 40 is kind of where I'm thinking on him. Mets bats, I think, are definitely going to go under owned here. I can't imagine Marquez has much left in the tank at this point. I know he's coming off Tommy John, and
He hasn't been pitching well. He's not an option. It doesn't look like to me.
Yeah, he's expected to throw around 75 pitches.
Yep.
It looks like so. You're going to get a bad Rockies bullpen afterwards too. They don't really have anyone in there that would worry me. I think the Mets are a really good leverage today and are going to go under owned. Probably my favorite leverage stack of the day, just because they're expensive and it's kind of hard to fit them in Philly. So I kind of like attacking this spot.
Such a Rockies thing to do. Bring your so-called ace up to pitch the last day before the All-Star break.
Off Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, just send him to the Wolves. Just his first start in a year and a half. Yeah, that's standard Rockies for you. I'm with you on Quintana. I think this is good chalk, right? I mean, there's just not that many options, and he's pitching well. Gets a perfect matchup. He's at home. He's a big favorite. I don't know. this might be a spot where I just roll the dice and hold hands with the field on Quintana, because I do expect him to pitch well, and I don't think there's going to be very many pitchers who do. So if you get two good pitching performances, regardless of if they're chalk, you're going to be, I think, happy with it. Given, I think I think we're going to see multiple pitchers go into the negative numbers today. Quintana, I think, is pretty safe to have a solid outing. Should get strikeouts at least against the Rockies, which is kind of his biggest flaw, right? Is he doesn't strike out a ton of guys, but when you face the Rockies, that's certainly mitigated to some extent. We'll keep it moving. 4 more games to talk about. It brings us to Pittsburgh and the Chicago White Sox. We've got a 9 total in this one, pretty high total for these two teams. This one in Chicago, it is hot, humid, and favorable winds in this one as well. Jared Schuster, lefty, sometimes starter, sometimes reliever, going to get the ball to start this game. He did pitch 2 days ago, just 1 inning. I wouldn't expect much more out of him than that. 1 or 2 innings, I think, from Schuster. And then Chad Kuhl, famous Chad Kuhl. There's a lot of DC dream haunters on this slate. Armand Marquez, Chad Kuhl. He's going to be in long relief. He last pitched on the 10th, so he should be able to go, I think, 50, 60 pitches in this one. But neither of Schuster nor Kuhl is any good. Certainly can look to the Pirates here if you want to. Obviously, a bad bullpen even behind those guys as well. And then Mitch Keller pitching for the Pirates. He's been good this year. I haven't played him a ton, but I certainly think he's in play here against a bad White Sox team. He goes deep into games, throws a bunch of pitches, and is, of course, a pretty good arm in general. And, of course, we do like picking on the White Sox. So, yeah, Keller kind of joins the Lodolo and Quintana chalk train for me, but a guy that I'm interested in despite the high price and high ownership. What are you doing, Bryce, with Pirates and White Sox here?
I like my Pirates today. They're pretty cheap. Expected Brian Hayes to lead off, 3.3K. I definitely expect him to get some ownership. I just don't have any faith in Schuster and Kuhl here. It's good hitting weather. I don't think the Pirates will be super popular outside of Hayes. It's kind of pinch hit risk and price is a little prohibitive on some of these other guys. So, yeah, I think I prefer them as a 3-man to a 5-man, but obviously good with both here. I think Chicago bats, or the White Sox that is, are okay. I don't love picking on Keller as much as some of these other chalk pitchers that we've talked about getting leverage against, but I do think like cheaper White Sox stacks are in play here to let you fit some bats. I think like a Gavin Sheets one-off, if you're not playing Keller, is pretty solid. So, yeah, not necessarily my absolute favorite spot. Likely going to be around, 5 to 10% on the Pirates, sub 5 on the White Sox, and Keller's probably going to come in right around the field for me, 30%. So, not taking any massive stands here, but definitely prefer the Pirates side of this.
Yeah, looking up some stuff. M. Westlake, a good Discord member, brings up, Quintana has been awesome with Alvarez behind the plate. 1.76 ERA in 46 innings. I don't look into that stuff or buy into it too much with the catcher splits, but worth pointing out there, and a good point. It is true. I did look it up after he said it. And then, the Pirates, you got to have some interest here, I think, with Schuster and Chad Kuhl. Just terrible pitchers. I don't think we have the Pirates lineup yet. Is that right, Bryce? Or did you see it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's out yet. But assuming it's the normal lineup, which I think it will be, I will have at least a little bit of interest in the Pirates. And then, I'm not going to the White Sox. Like you said, if you want to play a one-off for leverage, I think that makes sense. But I do think Keller should at least pitch pretty well here. Let's get to Texas and Houston. We do have a game finally with two good pitchers in it. Max Scherzer pitching for Texas, I believe his 5th start of the season. He's been pretty solid. The strikeouts haven't quite been there. He did get 6 last time out against the Angels. Did get up to 95 pitches this season high. So looks like he's rounding into form a little bit. He's not the same Max Scherzer that we're used to from the last, decade or so, but still a good pitcher, I think. Problem is he gets a Houston team that makes a lot of contact, and Scherzer's not cheap at 8,800. So I do think he's an okay play on this slate. Interested to hear where you sit on Scherzer, and then Ronel Blanco continues to get the job done. Played him a decent amount recently. He has come through for the most part, and I'd expect him to pitch pretty well here, frankly, in the Dome in Houston. Obviously, some dangerous bats in that Texas lineup, but also strikeouts to be had for the most part. So, yeah, on this slate, 10K Ronel Blanco makes sense to me. Some interest in 8,800 Scherzer, and I think there are better spots to attack for bats. What are you doing, Bryce, with Astros and Rangers?
One of my favorite pitching games here. You get two high upside pitchers against, kind of higher variance lineups. There's strikeouts to be had on both sides. Obviously, there does come with some power risk from, both Texas and Houston. But, I think that's something you have to be willing to take on here. You're not going to get many pitchers in good weather, or you don't have a combination of like a bad team in a bad park. All the bad teams are in good parks. I'd rather take the risk with like Blanco. I think he comes in like significantly below Lodolo, and I'll likely have them around the same ownership, if not higher, on Blanco. So I definitely like him. Scherzer, I like a little bit less. It's just, in my opinion, a tougher matchup, on the road, not quite as solid of a pitch count here. So, I just kind of think like if they did want to lay off Scherzer a bit before the All-Star break, like this could be a spot to do it, but that's not really backed up by anything other than,
sure,
just kind of intuition. But yeah, it's not going to keep me away from Scherzer. I still like him on this slate at 8,800. So, I'll probably be, 40% Blanco and, 20 to 25 Scherzer here. Don't love playing bats here. They're expensive. Obviously they carry individual upside, but definitely prefer them as like one-offs as opposed to full stacking. I'd rather just take extra shots on like, we've been through the good offenses on the slate, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this will hold true or not, but Sabre does have Scherzer as very, very low owned. They've got him around below 5%. I assume it'll be higher than that, Bryce?
Yeah, I can't imagine he's around there. If I had to guess, I'd guess like, 10 to 15.
Yeah. But you will get at least some ownership discount, I think, on both of these pitchers compared to some of the other guys that we talked about. And I do think both these guys are reasonable options. It's like one of those, you don't have to go completely off the board, but if you do want to get just away from the field a little bit, I do think both Scherzer and Blanco. I'm with you. I prefer Blanco, but I think both guys are reasonable options on this slate. Let's get to Washington and the Milwaukee Brewers. 9 total in this one. We've got Camporeale pitching for Milwaukee. He's been pretty solid this year. I do take a lot of lefties against him in general. This year, last year, pretty much his whole career, gives up a lot of power to lefties. You can also run on Camporeale, which does set up very well for the Nationals, assuming they have their expected lineup out there. They're one of the teams actually both these teams really like to get going on the base paths. I've played a lot of Nationals recently with some success, some failure, of course. That's baseball for you. But I do like them a little bit here against Camporeale. Looks like they're going to start with an opener. I didn't see that. Is that what you're seeing or no?
I haven't seen one yet, but I also haven't.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it'll be Camporeale. I've seen some sites have Rob Zastrinsky as the opener, but we'll see. Regardless, it doesn't really change too much for me with the Nationals. I think they are a pretty good sneaky stack. The Brewers did run through their three best bullpen arms with like 25 to 35 pitches each. I assume most of those guys are probably mostly unavailable for this game, unless it's tied in the 8th or 9th inning, something like that. So I do think the Nationals are sneaky, and I don't mind the Brewers either. Jake Irvin has pitched well. I'm not really completely buying it with him. Is coming off a rough start against the Mets. And yeah, bad bullpen behind Irvin as well. It's actually the National side that I have more interest in, and I haven't pulled up ownership on them. I assume they're going to be very low owned on this slate. I think they could potentially do some damage here. What are you doing, Bryce, with the Nationals and the Brewers?
It does look like there's going to be an opener in Zestrinsky. I don't know how to say his name. Sorry, I probably butchered that, but it doesn't really change my opinion too much. I don't imagine him throwing more than 2 innings at the max here. It should be right up for the bulk, as long as he doesn't get blown up. I was kind of surprised to see this game at a 9 total. Just
the Brewers in particular, team total near 5 is weird to me against Jake Irvin, who's pitched.
Irvin's been good. I don't fully buy it either, and I guess the betting market doesn't as well. But I was kind of expecting this game to come in, 8.5 juiced under would have been my guess. And, it's only a half run, but, there's a pretty big difference between 8.5 and 9. So, that kind of got me on the bats here a little bit more. But, looking at in the context of this slate, I think you kind of need the running upside, because you're not going to have as much home run upside here in this park. Not like it's an awful hitter's park or anything like that, but there are just some really good hitting environments out there on the East Coast. So probably going to get to, 5% Nats, which will be over. I'm not going to play them on like one of my main teams, but I don't hate the play. They're going to be completely unowned. And the Brewers probably, I don't imagine they come in very popular. I would think sub 10% for sure. So, getting a little above 5%, just kind of hitting the field is where I stand there. On Rhea and Irving, I probably prefer Irvin. Not going to play tons of either of these pitchers. I think both are going to carry a bit of ownership, but yeah, I kind of prefer other games to this as a whole.
The Strinsky pitching opening for the Brewers looks like it will be the case. Looking into it, it is kind of annoying if you were going to play the contrarian National stack. He's a lefty. I mean, it makes sense why the Brewers are doing it. It's a smart move. He's pitched 24 innings against left-handed batters in his career, hasn't allowed a single home run to any lefty, and I think just one home run in his career to lefties. We did get the Nationals lineup. Yeah, I was interested in guys like Abrams and Wood and Winker, but they're going to have to face this guy to start the game, and then they'll get, 1 or 2 at-bats against Rhea, which was kind of what I was targeting, and then back to the bullpen. So probably enough, frankly, to move me off of the Nationals. Just like the smart move by the Brewers. Obviously, if it's enough to take me off of that National stack against Rhea, but not enough for me to move to Colin Rand himself, I don't think. Last game on the slate, Chicago Cubs and St. Louis Cardinals. This one in St. Louis. We've got Jamison Tyone and Miles Michaelis pitching for the St. Louis Cardinals. Obviously, Tyone for the Cubs. What do we have? An 8.5 total in this one. Really hot, humid, winds blowing out in St. Louis. So certainly good hitting weather, especially compared to about as good at hitting weather as you can get in St. Louis, frankly. You mentioned Michaelis as a cheap option. I think that is true. I'm never really comfortable playing him, but on this slate at 6,900, I do get that call. Jamison Tyone, I don't think would be the craziest play either. He's pitched well in 5 or 6 straight games, including in some tougher matchups in this one. He's 8,300. I think you could go there if you wanted to as well. So this is a game where I could kind of see really going any direction. I don't hate these stacks either, frankly, against two mediocre pitchers in a great hitting weather game. What are you doing, Bryce, with Michaelis, Tyone, Cubs, and Cardinals?
It's really good hitting weather. Kind of surprised me that we didn't have slightly higher of a total here.
Yeah.
I think Mikolas is going to carry more ownership than people think here. He just comes in as like the safe, like cheaper guy that's below 7K. So I never really want to buy him in this spot. I kind of like the Cubs as leverage on him, to be honest. I think that they're they're obviously a high variance team. They can hit a lot of home runs, and they can strike out a lot. They carry bats with individual power. Don't think we have a lineup for them, or at least
we do have both lines. Yeah, they're out.
I mean, favorite individual bats in this game would be Happ, Morel, Suzuki, Nico. I kind of like the Cubs here over Mikolas. I don't want to be a buyer on him. Would rather go elsewhere pitching. Like in pretty much every team, I'd rather find the extra 1,000 to get up to like Quintana, or like all the way down and just full punt Rogers, as ugly as that sounds. So if I'm not buying on Mikolas, I'm not buying on Tallon. Haven't been a Jameson guy all year. I think he's overall he's been very lucky in my opinion. So I do want to be a buyer on the Cardinals as well. Neither of these teams break the bank. St. Louis doesn't have a bat over 4.3K. So they're a pretty like easily accessible stack, either as a 3 or a 5 man. So going to be buying on hitters, selling on pitchers here. Favorite individual bat would probably be Goldie. I don't think he's total dust yet, so we'll wait and see on that take. But I think the Cardinals are pretty solid plays here.
Cubs bullpen is pretty gassed out in this one too. I think they're going to ask Tyon to go as deep as he can. I kind of like the Cardinals here. It sounds like you maybe are on board with a little bit of a low-owned Cardinal stack. They've been
I like both sides.
Yeah, bad bullpen for the Cubs. I'm in on the Cardinals here on the last game on the slate. All right, that's all 10 games, Bryce. Let's get to stacks, pitchers, home run calls, and favorite hitters. I'll let you go first. Favorite stack and favorite contrarian stack.
Favorite stack, it's hard for me to get off Philly. I think they're a good shot here. Agree with that. Favorite contrarian stack, I'm going to go with the Marlins against Nick Lodolo today. I think really good hitting weather in Cincinnati and cheap prices and leverage all contribute to that.
Hard to argue with that. I'll go with the Red Sox as my favorite stack. Those lefties stacked up atop the lineup against Brady Singer, I think could have a lot of success. Frankly, there's a lot of offenses to choose from for these stack choices. I don't mind that Marlins calls contrarian stack. I will go, though, with the Cardinals as my contrarian stack. Just talked about them. I think they get pretty low owned against Tyon, who I don't really fear despite him pitching well recently. Most important pitcher today, Bryce. What are you doing at SP?
Blanco is going to be my highest owned pitcher. He's slightly higher than Lodolo, so I think I'll have the most leverage on him. Probably him and Quintana are going to be my two highest leverage guys. So like them a lot.
Yeah, I'm not my favorite way to play, but I am leaning toward just kind of eating some chalk at SP today. I was hoping, during the course of the show, maybe we'd uncover some hidden cheap gems. Not the case. So I'll go with Jose Quintana, 7,900, pitching well, gets the Rockies at home. He'll be popular, but he'll be on certainly a number of my teams, assuming I can't find anything in the next hour and 38 minutes prior to lock. Who's going yard today, Bryce? Plenty to choose from. Who's going deep for us?
I'm going to go with my guy, Brian De La Cruz.
Yeah, going with that Nationals. I like that. I will go with Wilyer Abreu. I'll stick with my favorite stack as well. Hopefully taking Brady Singer deep. And then finally, your favorite hitter on the slate.
Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, it's certainly a good option. I will go with Reese Hines. Come on down. I've been playing him every slate and coming through every single night. I'm shaking your head. I take it you.
Oh, no, just that you're going to get another 20-point performance tonight like he's been every game of his life. It's pretty incredible.
It's kind of hard to jump off the train when he gets you 20 points every single time, and you just keep playing him. It's like, all right, thank you, Reese Hines. I'm sure the magic will end at some point, but I'm gonna.
Kyle Schwarber did the same thing for me when he first came up, and no one was on him. And I just kept playing him every day. I was like, well, he's won me so much money the last week. I can't get off him now.
It's one of those spots
a little bit of it back.
If you've been playing Reese Hines, it's like kind of hard to jump off. If you haven't, it's almost hard to jump on, right? Because you're
like, oh, this guy's not going to keep fucking doing this, and then he just keeps doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That'll do it for this show. Thanks for watching, everybody. We do appreciate it. We do got the All-Star break coming up Monday through Thursday, and then I'll be off on Friday. So I'll be off for a whole week from baseball shows. I'll be back on Sunday morning from Chicago. Enjoy the break, everybody. Appreciate all your support during the first half of the season. We'll be back just as strong in the second half. And hopefully we'll go out with a bang on this Sunday afternoon. That'll do it for us. For Third and Schlong, I'm Draft Sheet. We're out of here.